Last night, I saw the gift I bought my mom, the one I saved for months to afford, crumpled in a trash bag. This morning, she hasn't stopped calling me. And the best part? She still has no idea how far I went. If you've ever been dismissed, belittled, or made to feel like your efforts didn't matter, stick around, because this is one of the most deeply satisfying revenge stories you'll hear. And if you're rooting for a little justice today, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive in. I've always wanted to believe my mom saw me, really saw me. Not just as her daughter, not just as a name on her phone bill or a person who happened to live under the same roof for most of my life, but as someone worth noticing. But if I'm being honest, my entire childhood felt like I was on stage, performing for an audience who refused to clap. She wasn't cruel in the way that makes people gasp in disbelief. She didn't yell at me every day or lock me in my room. No, her cruelty was quieter, sharper. The kind that hides in subtle comments, lukewarm smiles, and the absence of warmth where you'd expect it most. The kind where birthdays feel like chores, achievements like inconveniences, and "I'm proud of you" is a phrase you might only hear in your imagination. So when I stumbled on the gift, the one that made me stop in the middle of a crowded store, my hands frozen around the smooth edges of the box, I felt this rush of, maybe hope. It was a handmade ceramic jewelry box, glazed in this deep, ocean blue finish that caught the light like it was holding secrets. The lid had these intricate golden vines painted across it, curling into little blooms, like something from an antique shop. It wasn't just pretty, it was her. Or at least, the version of her I thought I could reach. For years, she'd kept her jewelry scattered across the bathroom counter, little earrings rolling under the sink, necklaces getting tangled. I thought, this is it. This is the kind of gift that says, I see you. I know you. I want to make your life easier, even if you've never tried to make mine easier. The price tag? Well, it wasn't friendly. I stood there, my stomach sinking, because the number printed in sharp black ink might as well have been a stop sign. I worked part-time at a local coffee shop, pulling shifts after school and on weekends. My paychecks barely covered my share of gas money, let alone luxury purchases. But for once, I didn't think about the extra hours, the blisters from wiping down counters at midnight, or the aching feet from standing for 6 hours straight. I thought about her face, about seeing it light up, just once, in a way that wasn't forced. That night, I went home and quietly moved my spending around. Skipped a few meals out with friends. Told myself I didn't need to update my worn-out sneakers yet. Every little sacrifice was a brick in the path to that jewelry box. By the time I went back to the store 2 weeks later, I was terrified it would be gone. But it was still there, the same deep blue, the same golden vines. I bought it without hesitating. The cashier even wrapped it in this crinkly tissue paper and slid it into a small white gift bag with ribbon handles. When I got home, I didn't just leave it in the bag. I sat on my bedroom floor with a roll of soft silver wrapping paper, smoothing every crease, making sure the tape was invisible. I even found a little card, not one of those cheesy pre-written ones, but blank, so I could write my own words. I didn't write much. Just enough to say, you matter to me. I hope this makes you smile. And for the first time in years, I felt excited to give her something. The morning I gave her the gift, the whole house smelled like coffee and burnt toast. It wasn't a special occasion, no birthday, no holiday. That was the point. I wanted it to be a surprise. A good surprise. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, the faint glow of the screen reflecting in her glasses. The half-empty mug of coffee beside her had that faint lipstick mark she always left on the rim. Hey, Mom, I said, setting the bag down in front of her. She didn't even look up at first. Just mumbled, "What's this?" Like I'd just handed her a pile of laundry instead of something I'd worked 2 weeks to afford. I forced a smile. Just, something I thought you'd like. Her eyebrows lifted the tiniest bit. She reached for the ribbon handles, pulling the tissue paper aside. I watched her fingers touch the smooth ceramic lid, and for a second, I thought, yes, she sees it, she likes it. But then her lips pulled into that thin line. Not a frown. Not a smile. Just neutral. She said, almost under her breath. It's nice. Nice. Like a stranger complimenting the weather. She didn't even lift the lid to see the inside, the soft velvet lining, the tiny compartments I'd chosen because I knew she liked to keep earrings separate. She just slid it back into the bag and pushed it slightly to the side, as if it were in the way of her phone screen. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Tried to tell myself maybe she was just busy. Maybe later, she'd look closer. We made small talk for a minute or two, or rather, I tried, and she answered in distracted one-word replies. Then she stood up, grabbed her coffee, and left the bag sitting there on the kitchen table like it was a grocery receipt she didn't need anymore. That night, I was taking out the trash. The air was cold, sharp enough to make my breath puff out in little clouds. I tied up the black garbage bag from the kitchen, heaving it over my shoulder. Halfway to the bin outside, something shifted inside the bag, and I heard a faint clink. I frowned, carefully set it down. And when I opened the top just enough to peek in, my heart stopped. There it was. The jewelry box. Still in its gift wrap, the silver paper crumpled and creased from being shoved in with coffee grounds, banana peels, and a torn-up cereal box. The smell hit me first. Stale coffee, old food, that sour tang of trash. Then the anger. Not loud anger. Not screaming anger. Cold anger. It wasn't just that she didn't like it. She hadn't said anything. She hadn't even pretended for my sake. She had thrown it away the same day. I stood there in the dark, my fingers tightening around the edge of the bag, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something heavier than hurt. It was the feeling of a bridge burning. Standing in the cold, clutching that trash bag like it was a crime scene, I realized something. This wasn't new. It was just the first time I couldn't make excuses for her. I'd been trained, maybe by hope, maybe by desperation, to brush things off. To convince myself she just didn't know how to express herself, or had a lot on her mind. But if I'm being honest, my mom had always treated my gestures like background noise. I remembered my 15th birthday. I'd baked my own cake, a simple vanilla sponge with frosting that wasn't exactly Pinterest-worthy, but it was mine. I was so proud. I waited until she came home from work, excited to cut the first slice together. She walked in, glanced at the cake, and said, "That's nice, but I'm not really in the mood for sweets," before heading to her room. I ended up eating the first slice alone, the house so quiet that the sound of my fork scraping the plate felt deafening. Or the time I got an award at school for a short story I'd written. The principal had called my mom personally, inviting her to the small ceremony. She didn't show. Said she forgot and asked if I could just send her a picture of the certificate later. Then there was the necklace. I'd saved for weeks to get her this delicate silver chain with a tiny charm, her birthstone. I gave it to her on Mother's Day, and she wore it once, to brunch with her friends. 2 weeks later, I found it tangled in a drawer, the chain bent, the charm scratched, like it had been tossed in without a second thought. It was always the same cycle. I'd give her something, my time, my effort, my money, and she'd accept it with this hollow politeness, only for it to end up forgotten, broken, or discarded. And every time, I'd tell myself, she's just not good at showing appreciation. I'd try harder next time. But that night, staring into the black bag, coffee grounds clinging to the edges of the gift wrap I'd smoothed so carefully, I realized something dangerous. This wasn't about her not knowing how to show appreciation. It was about her not valuing me. And once you see that truth, you can't unsee it. I didn't go back inside right away. I stood in the dark, the cold air burning my lungs, letting that realization settle in like a stone in my chest. And then, slowly, I felt the stone turn into something else. I brought the trash bag back inside. Not because I wanted to save the gift. At that moment, it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt contaminated. Not just by coffee grounds and kitchen scraps, but by what it represented. Every ignored birthday, every brushed-off achievement, every "it's nice" that really meant I don't care. I set the bag down on the floor of my room and just stared at it. It's funny, I always thought rage came in loud, explosive bursts. But this was quiet. Methodical. My breathing was steady, my hands didn't shake. It was like my body knew exactly what needed to happen, and it was just waiting for my mind to catch up. I thought about all the hours I'd worked for that gift. The blister on my thumb from scrubbing milk pitchers, the aching legs after late-night cleanups at the coffee shop. How I'd skipped out on dinners with friends, how I'd told myself it was worth it because this gift would mean something. And then I thought about her face. Not the one she showed the world. Polite, composed, even charming when it served her. The one I saw when I gave her the jewelry box, that flicker of disinterest, the way her gaze slid right past it, past me. That's when a thought settled into my mind, as sharp and clear as glass. She doesn't get to do this to me again. She didn't just throw away a gift. She threw away a chance, Maybe the last one I was ever going to give her, to treat me like I mattered. And if she didn't value me when I was bending over backwards to show her love, she was about to see what it felt like when I stopped trying. I pulled the jewelry box out of the bag, careful not to let the coffee stains touch my clothes. I peeled the soggy wrapping paper away, each tear sounding louder in the stillness of my room. Underneath, the box was still beautiful. The deep ocean blue glaze still caught the light, the gold vines still curled across the lid. It deserved better than her. And so did I. I didn't have the full revenge plan yet, but I knew this. I wasn't just going to let her toss my effort into the trash and walk away without feeling the sting of it. If she wanted to treat my gifts like garbage, fine. But I was going to make sure the next thing she lost would hurt. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was upset, that part had burned away hours ago, but because my brain wouldn't stop working. Turning the problem over and over like a puzzle cube, looking for the perfect sequence of moves. I kept coming back to one thought. If she can throw away something I worked for, why should she get to keep anything I've ever given her? Over the years, I'd given her a lot. Scarves I'd knitted in the dead of winter when my fingers were numb. A leather wallet I'd saved 2 months for. A framed photo of us from a rare trip we'd taken together, one I'd paid for with my own money. She didn't deserve a single piece of it. I decided I was going to take it all back. Not sneakily. Not in the middle of the night. No, I was going to do it in broad daylight, in a way she couldn't ignore. But I wasn't just going to walk in and strip the house of my gifts. I needed something sharper. Something that would twist, just enough, so she'd feel it. The next afternoon, I drove to a dollar store and bought the cheapest, tackiest replacements I could find. A scarf made from itchy acrylic yarn that looked like it had been run over by a lawn mower. A wallet with the faux leather peeling at the corners. A plastic picture frame that didn't even stand up straight. When I got home, I gathered every meaningful gift I'd ever given her and carefully replaced them with these bargain bin knockoffs. The real leather wallet? Slipped into my bag. The framed photo? Taken, replaced with a blurry stock image of a smiling stranger family. I didn't say anything that night. I wanted her to notice, to feel that little prickle in her chest when something she'd taken for granted suddenly wasn't there anymore. By the next morning, she had. At 8:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Mom, where's my necklace?" I didn't reply. 8:17 a.m., another buzz. "Mom, did you take my wallet?" By 8:45, she'd called 3 times. I let them ring out. By 9:12, she was at full panic mode. "Mom, why is there a cheap picture in my frame? What is going on?" When I finally picked up at 9:30, I kept my voice calm. Almost casual. "Morning, Mom. Sleep well?" She didn't even bother with pleasantries. "Don't play games with me. Where's all my stuff?" I let the silence stretch for just long enough before saying, "Oh, you mean the gifts I've given you over the years?" "Yeah." I decided to throw them out. "What? Why?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "Well, you didn't seem to have a problem doing the same to me last night. Figured you'd understand." The pause on the other end was delicious. I could almost hear the gears turning, the realization dawning, the sting of being called out in a way she couldn't deny. The silence on the other end of the call wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, like the kind you get right before a thunderclap. "Finally," she said, her voice clipped. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't mean anything by it. I almost laughed. "You threw it in the trash, Mom. With coffee grounds." "That's not an accident." She tried to pivot, her tone shifting into that sharp-edged guilt trip I'd heard my whole life. "You're overreacting. I never asked you to buy me things. I don't need you to." "Exactly," I cut in. "You don't need me. Not my time. Not my effort. Not my money. So I'm taking it all back." That's when the real panic set in. Her voice went from icy to frantic. "Well, fine, just give them back then." "You can't just." "Oh, I could," I said, letting my voice drop low. "And I did. And before you ask, no, you're not getting them back. I already sold a few, actually. People do value them, just not you." There was a gasp on the other end, sharp, like I'd slapped her. "You sold them." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Funny, isn't it? How something you treated like garbage turns out to be worth something to someone else. By the time we hung up, she'd gone from angry to pleading. First it was, You're being childish. Then, you're breaking my heart. And finally, can we just talk about this? I didn't mean it, I swear. But I didn't give her what she wanted. Every call after that went to voicemail. Every text was left on read. I could almost feel her frustration building with each unanswered attempt, because for once, she was the one being ignored. For once, she was the one who wanted something from me and couldn't get it. That night, I put the jewelry box, now cleaned and free from coffee stains, on my own dresser. It looked better there. Safer. And every time I saw it, I remembered. You teach people how to treat you. And I was done teaching her that it was okay to treat me like trash. 2 days later, I decided to make it official. No more back and forth texts, no more angry voicemails. If she wanted closure, I'd give it to her, in a way that would stick. I drove over to her house mid-afternoon, when I knew she'd be home. I didn't bother knocking. I walked right in. Years of having my own key meant the lock had never been a barrier. She was in the living room, pacing with her phone in hand. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, relief first, then indignation. "Oh, so you do know how to answer me." I didn't respond. Instead, I set a plain cardboard box down on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" she asked, suspicious. "Everything of mine that's still in your house," I said flatly. "And everything of yours I ever cared enough to give you." She opened the box. Inside were the knockoff replacements, the peeling faux leather wallet, the blurry stock photo in the crooked frame, the scratchy scarf. "What the hell is this?" I met her eyes. "It's how you treat me. Cheap. Disposable. Forgettable. Thought I'd make it easier for you." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in years, she didn't have a quick retort or a cutting remark ready. She just stared at the box, at the empty space where all the real things used to be. I stepped closer, my voice calm but unshakable. "You don't get to throw away what I give you, whether it's a gift, my time, or myself, and expect me to keep showing up. That's over." And then, without raising my voice, I delivered the line I'd been holding onto since that night with the trash bag. "From now on, if you want something from me, you're going to have to earn it." I turned and walked out before she could respond. As I reached the driveway, she called after me, first my name, then a shaky, "Please, can we talk?" But I didn't stop. The air outside felt sharper, cleaner. I got in my car, shut the door, and let the quiet settle in. It wasn't just about the jewelry box anymore. It was about taking back every ounce of worth I'd given her to decide on. And the best part? The look on her face, that stunned, hollow stare, was better than any apology she could have faked. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't about the money I spent or the hours I worked to buy that gift. It was about the way she made me feel, like my effort was invisible, my love disposable. People talk a lot about forgiveness and letting things go. But here's the truth. Sometimes, letting go isn't about moving on quietly. Sometimes, it's about setting boundaries so hard they echo. That jewelry box still sits on my dresser. I see it every morning. And every time I do, I'm reminded that you teach people how to treat you, by what you allow, and by what you refuse to accept. She hasn't thrown away a single thing I've given her since. Not because she suddenly learned how to appreciate me, but because she knows now that if she does, I'll take it all back, and I won't give it again. If you've ever been dismissed, belittled, or made to feel like your efforts didn't matter, stick around, because this is one of the most deeply satisfying revenge stories you'll hear. And if you're rooting for a little justice today, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive in.